If anyone here knows any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." The priest's voice echoed through the vaulted, gold-leaf arches of Seoul's grandest cathedral, smooth as silk and cold as grave dirt. I stood in the shadow of the massive oak doors. My hand rested against the cold steel of the silenced pistol at my waist, watching the woman I loved prepare to surrender her life to a monster. Her name was Adanna, a force of nature from Nigeria, with skin like rich dark espresso, eyes that could command a room without a word, and a sharp, brilliant mind that had kept our syndicate alive through the bloody wars of the underworld. She stood at the altar clad in white silk, but she wasn't a bride. She was a prisoner. And the man standing next to her in the bespoke velvet suit? Min-jun, a viper who had spent 3 years whispering lies into the ear of the high court, selling out our bloodlines, our territory, and our family for a golden seat among the elite ruling families of Asia. He thought he had won. He thought he had buried me 6 feet under in the frozen docks of Busan 3 weeks ago. He thought Adanna had no choice left but to sign over her empire to him through a holy covenant. Min-jun smiled, leaning toward Adanna, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. "Say the words, my love," he whispered softly, loud enough for the microphone to catch. "Save your people. Sign the treaty." Adanna's jaw tightened. She didn't look at him. She looked straight at the altar, her breath coming in shallow, restrained bursts. She knew what this marriage meant. It wasn't a union. It was a surrender. "I ask again," the priest chanted, raising his hands toward the marble ceiling. "Does any man oppose this union?" Silence hung heavy in the incense-scented air. The pews were filled with 200 of the most dangerous, wealthy, and corrupt power brokers across Asia and Africa. Syndicate lords, corrupt politicians, and shadowy enforcers. None of them dared to speak. To speak against Min-jun today was to invite a bullet through your skull before sunset. The priest began to lower his hands. "Then by the authority vested in me." Boom! The sound shattered the heavy silence like thunder crashing inside a tomb. Before the sound could even bounce off the stained glass windows, I kicked the heavy double-oaken cathedral doors off their iron hinges with a force that sent structural dust raining down on the front pews. The massive wooden doors smashed inward, splintering down the center and crushing the 2 armed guards standing watch inside. Panic detonated through the congregation like wildfire. Chairs scraped frantically against marble. Women shrieked. Men reached under their tailored tuxedos for sidearms that would prove entirely useless. I stepped through the swirling cloud of splintered oak and white smoke, my black leather trench coat sweeping against the floor, blood dripping from the knuckle guards of my tactical gloves. Behind me, the gray, overcast skyline of Seoul framed my silhouette. "I object," I said, my voice cutting through the rising terror like a razor blade. Every eye in the room locked onto me. Min-jun's face drained of every ounce of color, his smug grin melting into pure, unadulterated shock. Adanna's head whipped around. Her dark eyes widened, glistening with sudden, unbidden tears as her lips parted in disbelief. "Jae-hyun?" she breathed, the words slipping past her lips like a prayer she had given up on asking. "You're late," she murmured, a faint, dangerous smile finally breaking through her stoic expression. "Traffic was hell," I replied, racking the slide of my automatic rifle. "And I had to clear out a few of Min-jun's trash piles on my way up the steps." Before we dive deeper into the blood, the betrayal, and how an Afro-Korean alliance is about to tear the global syndicate apart piece by piece, hit that subscribe button right now. Welcome back to Afro Soul Stories, where love, blood, and loyalty collide. Drop a comment down below right now with the word war if you know Jae-hyun is about to destroy this entire room for Adanna. And make sure to hit that like button so the algorithm knows we bring the absolute best stories to your screen every single week. Min-jun recovered from his shock within seconds, his face twisting into a mask of rage. He lunged forward, grabbing Adanna by the wrist and pulling her behind him while shoving his hand into his breast pocket. "Kill him!" he screamed at the guards lined along the balcony. "Kill him now. He's a ghost. Shoot him." For guards on the upper balustrade pointed their submachine guns down toward the aisle. They were fast, but I had spent 3 weeks crawling out of hell just for this precise second. I raised my arm and squeezed the trigger of the custom grenade launcher slung across my chest. A smoke canister detonated directly beneath the choir loft, blinding the snipers instantly. Before the thick gray fog could spread, I drew my twin suppressed pistols, moving down the center aisle with calculated, lethal precision. Thwip, thwip, thwip. 3 bodyguards stepped into the aisle to block my path. 3 shots rang out, muffled and low. 3 bodies hit the pristine white runner, staining the immaculate satin path with dark red streaks. The high society guests scrambled over one another, diving beneath the wooden pews, dropping champagne glasses, and screaming as the grand cathedral descended into absolute chaos. Min-jun backed up toward the side altar, dragging Adanna along with him. "You think you can stop this, Jae-hyun?" Min-jun roared, his voice cracking over the noise of screaming guests and alarm bells. "The High Court signed off on this. The African territory belongs to the syndicate now. You are one man against an empire." I dropped my empty magazine onto the marble floor with a metallic clink and slapped a fresh clip into place without breaking my stride. I stopped 10 feet from the altar, stepping right over the body of a fallen court enforcer. "I didn't come here to debate the High Court, Min-jun," I said, raising my eyes to meet Adanna's fierce, unwavering gaze. "I came to collect my queen." Adanna looked down at Min-jun's hand clutching her wrist. Without taking her eyes off me, she brought her sharp metal heel down directly onto Min-jun's leather shoe, shattering his foot. Min-jun howled in agony, loosening his grip. In one fluid motion, Adanna ripped her silk veil off her head, threw the white fabric over Min-jun's face to blind him, and delivered a brutal knee directly into his chest, sending the traitor tumbling down the altar steps. She stepped over him, tearing off the long train of her wedding dress to expose her combat boots, hidden beneath the white silk, and ran down the altar steps straight toward me. "You took your sweet time, Jae-hyun," she said, her voice steady and lethal as she reached my side, pulling a hidden dagger out from the lining of her garter belt. "I had to make sure I brought enough ammunition for the entire High Court," I replied, handing her a spare pistol from my coat. She caught it flawlessly, racking the slide with a professional, satisfying click. "Good, because every family from Lagos to Seoul just put a price on our heads." "Let them try," I said, turning my back to her as we took up a back-to-back combat stance in the middle of the burning cathedral. "Today, we declare war on the world." Note for Afro Soul Stories channel. The story continues seamlessly into the setup of their alliance, the history of how Min-jun betrayed the syndicate, and the global hunt across Seoul and Lagos. Reply with "Continue to Chapter 2" to proceed immediately to the next section. The smoke inside the cathedral was thick enough to choke a lesser man, but for Adanna and me, it felt like oxygen. We stood back to back in the middle of the aisle, the acrid stench of gunpowder mixing with the heavy scent of crushed lilies and burning velvet. Above us, the grand stained glass windows painted the carnage in brilliant shades of ruby red and sapphire blue. Min-jun was groaning on the floor near the altar, clutching his broken ribs, but his surviving security forces were already mobilizing from the side entrances. "We have 30 seconds before the High Court's heavy tactical team breaches the perimeter," Adanna whispered, her back pressed firm against mine. I could feel the rapid, steady rhythm of her heartbeat. She wasn't trembling. Adanna had built her reputation across the underworld of Lagos and the high-tech corridors of Seoul not by running from fires, but by starting them. "Then we have 20 seconds to spare," I replied, raising my weapon toward the eastern balcony where 2 guards were taking aim. Thwip, thwip. Both bodies tumbled over the mahogany railing, crashing onto the marble floor below. "Min-jun's private vault is beneath the altar," Adanna said quickly, racking her slide. "He transferred the encryption keys to our West African trade routes onto a physical drive. He's wearing it around his neck. If he keeps that drive, my family in Nigeria is dead by midnight. Then let's go collect it." Before we step deeper into the shadows of Seoul's underground and uncover how this deadly alliance was built, smash that like button right now. If you're loving the intensity of the story, subscribe to Soul Sauce and leave a comment down below with the word unstoppable to show your support for Jae-hyun and Adanna. I grabbed Adanna's hand, pulling her through the haze of smoke as bullets began to chew up the pews around us. Wood splinters flew like shrapnel. We reached the altar just as Min-jun scrambled to his knees, his eyes wide with wild, desperate terror. The aristocratic arrogance that had defined him for years was completely gone, replaced by the ugly face of a coward exposed. Jae-hyun, please, Min-jun gasped, coughing up blood, backing away on his hands and knees against the holy altar. You don't understand. The High Court threatened to wipe out my entire bloodline. I had to give them the African routes. I had no choice. Adanna stepped forward, her combat boot coming down hard on his chest, pinning him to the marble steps. She leaned in close, her dark eyes flashing with pure, unadulterated fire. You always had a choice, Min-jun, she said, her voice dropping to an icy, lethal whisper. You chose greed. You chose treason. And worst of all, you thought you could use me as your shield. She reached down, snatched the platinum chain from around his neck with a brutal yank, and tore the encrypted drive free. Min-jun sobbed, reaching up with trembling hands. They will hunt you to the ends of the earth. You can't fight the syndicate. Korea, Nigeria, the High Court, they own everything. I stepped beside Adanna, racking the slide of my rifle and staring down at the man who used to call me a brother. Let them come. We'll burn their empire to ashes and build ours on top of it. I didn't waste another bullet on him. A traitor like Min-jun was better left to answer to the High Court when they realized he had failed to secure the drive. I grabbed Adanna's waist, pulled her close, and pointed my weapon toward the massive stained glass window behind the altar. Hold on to me, I muttered. Always, she answered, wrapping her arms around my neck. I fired a grappling line straight through the glass, shattering the image of the saint into a million falling diamonds, and engaged the winch. The steel cable snapped taut, pulling us off our feet and slinging us straight through the window into the crisp, cold Seoul air just as the main doors were blasted open by heavy military reinforcements. We plummeted 3 stories down toward the narrow alleyway behind the cathedral. I fired the deceleration burst, and we landed hard on the roof of my customized armored SUV, bouncing off the reinforced steel before hitting the pavement on our feet. Sirens were wailing in the distance, screaming toward the cathedral from every corner of the district. The entire city of Seoul was about to go on lockdown. I unlocked the driver's side door, but Adanna shoved me gently toward the passenger seat, a dangerous smile touching her lips despite the smudge of soot across her cheekbone. You did the shooting upstairs, she said, sliding into the driver's seat and slamming the engine start button. The V8 engine roared to life with a guttural, terrifying mechanical snarl. I drive. Fair enough, I said with a slight grin, throwing my tactical bag into the footwell and grabbing the radio scanner. Where to? Adanna slammed the vehicle into gear, spinning the wheel as the tires shrieked against the asphalt, throwing the heavy SUV out of the alley just as 2 enemy sedans pulled up to block the exit. She didn't hit the brakes. She hit the accelerator. First, we survived the next 10 minutes, she said, her eyes locked on the road ahead as we barreled toward the oncoming vehicles. Then we call Lagos. The armored SUV struck the lead sedan with a sickening crunch of steel and breaking glass, throwing both enemy cars aside like toy blocks. Adanna never flinched. She fought the steering wheel, righted our path, and slammed the accelerator down, plunging us into the rain-slicked, neon-lit maze of downtown Seoul. Behind us, red and blue lights flashed frantically through the storm, mixed with the unmapped vehicles of High Court hit squads closing in from every avenue. They've locked down the district, I yelled over the roar of the engine, monitoring the encrypted police band on my tactical tablet. Min-jun's allies inside the Seoul Metropolitan Police just issued a city-wide kill on-site order. They're calling us international terrorists. Let them call us whatever they want, Adanna replied, her hands steady on the wheel as she drifted the heavy vehicle through a tight turn into an underground logistics tunnel. They can name the monster after it eats them. She tapped the vehicle's comms display, dialing an encrypted, multi-routed satellite channel that bounced through 5 dummy servers in London, Johannesburg, and Dubai before connecting to a private terminal in Lagos. The line clicked open with static, followed by the deep, resonant voice of Chief Adanna, Adanna's older brother, and the undisputed commander of the West African Defense Syndicate. Adanna, Adanna's voice boomed through the speakers. "We lost your signal during the ceremony. The news channels in Asia are going crazy. They're saying Jae-hyun breached the cathedral." "Jae-hyun is alive, Adanna," Adanna said, glancing at me for a split second, her eyes glowing with raw pride. "And Minjun is ruined. I have the drive." A long silence hung on the line before Adanna let out a low, booming laugh that shook the speakers. "I knew that Korean ghost wouldn't let you marry that dog. What is your status?" "We're surrounded in the heart of Seoul," I chimed in, leaning toward the mic. "The High Court is moving every asset. They have to stop us from leaving the peninsula. If they retrieve this drive, your perimeter in Lagos collapses by morning." "Then do not let them take it," Adanna said, his tone instantly shifting into iron seriousness. "Jae-hyun, my sister, listen to me closely. The High Court has called an emergency summit at their offshore fortress in Incheon. If they ratify the hit, every syndicate in the world will turn against us. You must destroy the High Court's central mainframe at Incheon before they broadcast the authorization to Europe and the Americas." "Consider it done," Adanna said. "Prepare your heavy units in Lagos. If we survive tonight, we take the fight to their front doors." "May your ancestors clear your path," Adanna replied before the line went dark. "Before we hit the water and execute the most insane heist in syndicate history, make sure you show some love. Hit that subscribe button right now for Soul Sauce. Leave a like on this video, and drop a comment down below with the word Alliance to support Jae-hyun and Adanna as they take down the global court. Adanna pulled the SUV into a hidden safehouse bay beneath an abandoned shipping warehouse in the industrial port of Incheon. The heavy metal shutters slammed down behind us, cutting off the sound of distant sirens. We stepped out of the vehicle, drenched in sweat and rain. The adrenaline that had carried us out of the cathedral was finally beginning to level out, leaving behind the heavy weight of what we were truly standing against. Adanna walked over to the weapons rack mounted on the concrete wall, grabbing 2 high-caliber tactical rifles and tossing one to me. As I caught it, she stepped in close, placing her hand gently on my chest over my tactical vest. "3 weeks ago, when Minjun told me you were dead in Busan, I felt like my world ended. Jae-hyun?" she whispered, her dark eyes searching mine with intense emotion. "I almost pulled the trigger on myself before I decided to take his empire down from the inside." I wrapped my hand around hers, feeling the warmth of her skin against mine. "I promised you in Lagos that nobody takes what's ours. Not Minjun, not the High Court, not anyone. I crawled out of that bay because I knew you were waiting." She leaned up and pressed her lips to mine. A deep, fierce kiss born out of blood, survival, and unbreakable loyalty. When she pulled back, her eyes were sharp as diamond. "Then let's go end this war." The rain poured heavily over the yellow lights of the Incheon deepwater terminal. Out on the black water sat the Sovereign, a massive, converted military command vessel that served as the mobile, lawless fortress of the High Court. Armed guards in black tactical gear patrolled the perimeter decks under heavy searchlights. Inside that ship sat 7 regional lords of the global syndicate, preparing to sign the execution warrant that would erase our families from history. We didn't use boats. We didn't use helicopters. We dropped into the freezing ocean 2 miles out, equipped with closed-circuit rebreathers and underwater propulsion units, gliding beneath the radar grid like 2 shadows in the deep. We breached the hull near the ballast tanks using thermite charges that cut through the reinforced steel without making a sound. One by one, we moved through the lower decks like ghosts. Thwip, thwip. Silenced shots dropped the corridor sentries before they could hit their alarm buttons. Adanna moved with lethal grace, clearing corners, her dark silken hair tied back. Her weapon barked with precision every time an enemy opened a door. We were no longer just 2 survivors. We were an unstoppable force running on pure vengeance. We reached the central server room on Deck 3. I slotted the encrypted drive into the main console, overriding the ship's security grid. Initiating complete wipe, I muttered as the screen flashed red. I'm sending a virus through their entire global network. In 30 seconds, every bank account, every blackmail file, and every operative identity the High Court owns will be deleted forever. Warning. System compromise. An automated voice echoed through the room. Red emergency lights began to rotate along the ceiling, bathing the room in a blood-colored glow. Sirens wailed across the entire vessel. "We have company," Adanna shouted, stepping into the doorway and firing a heavy burst down the corridor as high-caliber rounds slammed against the doorframe. "Data wipe at 80%. I roared, holding my position at the console with one hand while drawing my sidearm with the other to cover her flank. The heavy steel doors at the end of the hall blew inward. Step by step, the remaining lords of the High Court, flanked by their heavy shock troopers, advanced on our position. "It's over, Jae-hyun," screamed Lord Kong, the senior member of the court, stepping through the smoke with a golden pistol raised. "You cannot destroy the court. We are the system. You used to be," Adanna shouted back, stepping past the doorway, her rifle locked onto his chest. "Now you're just history." The computer terminal chimed with a loud, digital tone. Data wiped. Mainframe purged. "Now, Jae-hyun," Adanna yelled. I slammed the manual override switch for the ship's fuel lines, releasing thousands of gallons of high-grade marine diesel directly into the engine room, and tossed a thermite grenade onto the central floor. "Run!" I grabbed Adanna by the hand, pulling her down the secondary escape hatch as the thermite ignited. A chain reaction of massive explosions ripped through the belly of the Sovereign. The deck buckled beneath us as giant orange fireballs punched through the steel hull. High Court guards threw down their weapons in absolute terror, leaping off the burning decks into the pitch-black ocean below. We burst onto the stern deck just as the stern began to tilt sharply toward the sky. Fire was consuming the superstructure, erasing the records, the money, and the power of the syndicate that had ruled the underworld for half a century. We ran to the edge of the railing, looking out over the churning black water. Adanna looked at me, rain wiping the soot from her cheeks, her laugh ringing out over the sound of the roaring flames behind us. "Where are we going now, Jae-hyun?" she asked, holding my hand tightly. I smiled, pulling her close as the burning ship sank into the ocean behind us. "Lagos, it's time to build our own empire." Together, we jumped off the edge, plunging into the deep blue water, leaving the burning wreckage of the old world behind us forever. Thank you for watching this full story on Afro Soul Stories. If you stayed until the very end, drop a comment down below with the words, "The New Empire," so I know who the real ones are. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone who loves intense Afro-Korean romance and action stories. See you in the next episode.